What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have to discuss episode 7 of Dexter Original Sin. This week's episode of Dexter was so crazy, so let's get into it. It goes without saying on a recap video that there will be spoilers, but I do just have to emphasize this because it was a huge episode with major spoilers ahead, so fair warning, if you have not seen episode 7, this is not the video for you. Come back to it after you've seen episode 7. We do find out at the end of this episode who the big bad is, and I will share some of my thoughts about this at the end of this video. So episode 7 was called The Big Bad Body Problem. So just by the title of this episode, I had a feeling that we would find out who the big bad is. I did put out a theory video yesterday about one of my predictions or one of my suspects, and I did say, I wonder if we're going to find out who the big bad is in episode 7, just because in past seasons of Dexter, we typically find out pretty early on who it is, and we get to watch along as Miami Metro and Dexter simultaneously hunt down this person. But 7 episodes in, we did not know who the big bad was. But like I said, we do finally find out at the end of this episode. However, the episode opens with Dexter going to the swamp with the alligators to dump the body. We saw this at the end of episode 6. He goes to dump Levi Reed's body, but it is now an active crime scene. And the cops tell him to turn around, but he decided to act like he belongs there, and he tells the cop, "I'm with forensics. Why else would I be here?" All the while, he has the body of Levi Reed in the back of his truck. And his inner voice is saying to himself, "I wonder if I'd get life in prison or the electric chair." We saw previously that Ferrer's arm pops back up in the swamp. The alligators did not eat the entire arm. Vince tells Dexter to get fingerprints off the arm. And obviously, Dexter doesn't want this investigation to go on, so he tells Vince, "I don't know, there's probably no fingerprints because of the decaying in the water." And Vince says, "When Tanya's not here, I'm in charge, so just do it." And Dexter knows that the hand is intact enough to at least get partial prints, which could lead homicide to him. So Dexter feeds the arm to the alligators so that they basically can't continue the investigation. Dexter drags Levi Reed's body to a dumpster, and that's how he chooses to dispose of him. I think this is so risky and sloppy, and obviously going forward this is not going to last very long, but Ferrer gets dumped into the garbage truck, and Dexter's inner voice says 3 hours from now his body will be lost in a sea of trash. And then our next scene, we go to Nikki Spencer, Captain Spencer's kid who got abducted previously, and we see him create a weapon out of the handle of the bucket that he was given to use the bathroom in. He breaks off the handle, creates some kind of a weapon, and we see him sharpening it on the floor. This was so smart. I love when characters do smart things like this, and for a young kid, this was very smart of him. Dexter gets back home after disposing of Levi Reed. He's super hungry as always, shoveling spaghetti into his mouth. Deb notices that he reeks because he's been in a dumpster. Dexter asks her why Sophia is sending me these random numbers, and Deb tells him it's code words and she has to decipher it for him. Sophia's been sending him messages like, "I miss you," "Do you miss me?" "Why haven't you called me?" And Dex tells Deb that he hasn't called Sophia since their double date. And then Harry and Dexter talk about his night and how he got rid of Ferrer's arm and how he dumped Reed. And Harry tells him, "You dodged a bullet this time, but your goal should be to not get shot at in the first place." And then Dexter is on his way to work after not having slept all night. But Sophia shows up and asks him, "Why aren't you calling me?" He says, "I was at a crime scene all night," but then she finds a condom wrapper in his truck, but it's really from the dumpster that he was in earlier, and she gets pissed and storms off. Then at Miami Metro, they're talking about Jimmy Powell's murder and kidnapping of Nikki, Spencer's son. They're trying to find a safe house of the cartels. They're pulling in informants to see if anyone's willing to talk. The next step is working with the DA office to negotiate reduced sentences for incarcerated cartel members who are willing to give up any info. We find out it's been 4 days since Nikki was taken, same amount of time since Jimmy went missing, and his finger showed up, so every second counts while looking for Nikki. Spencer asks about the arm that was found at the alligator place, Ferrer's arm, but they tell him the evidence was eaten. And then LaGuerta says, what about my cases? Spencer's like, what about them? She says, I think we're dealing with a serial killer, and Spencer calls her and Harry into his office. Deb had to hitchhike to school. Sophia left her stranded because she stormed off, pissed at Dexter. But Sophia and Deb argue over Dex, and Deborah takes Dexter's side and says he's not cheating. Captain Spencer doesn't buy LaGuerta's theory at first. He doesn't think that they really have a serial killer on their hands because each kill was a different method, but she thinks that the killer is experimenting, trying to find out which method they most enjoy, and Harry thinks that LaGuerta is onto something. And then we get another Harry flashback with Laura. It's been almost a year now since she's been working for him. She's like, when is it going to end? He says as soon as we get Estrada talking on the hidden wire. Laura says, what if I refuse? And Harry says, then you go to jail and they'll put your boys in foster care. Young Dexter comes out and calls Harry daddy, and they also show Brian. And then Harry gets home to Doris and Deb. He goes to kiss Doris, but she pulls away. She's upset because she thinks that he was out cheating, but he says, I told you it was over. And he wants to work through it with her and says that he still loves her. Next up, Dexter is kind of scoping out where his new dumping grounds are going to be. Dexter goes to take some records downstairs and comes across Batista. He's looking at photos of Ferrer's arm, where he figures out that it was Ferrer because of the ring. Batista previously told Dexter about him back at his cousin's restaurant because he's the one who lends out money to people and makes it impossible for them to pay it back. Batista's pissed about this. He wants to open a new evidence report and he needs to know what happened. But Dexter's inner voice is like, the last thing I wanted was an investigation into a crime where the killer was me. So he convinces Batista that Ferrer got brought to justice and that Batista should give all of his time and energy to finding Nikki. And then we get another scene with Nikki and the killer brings him food. And Nikki says, you're going to have to come in here and make me eat it. So the killer comes in and Nikki slices him on the arm with the weapon that he made. But the killer chops Nikki's finger off. And then we see Harry and LaGuerta go knock on some doors to ask some questions about the case that they're working on. They have to take the 16-year-old girl's car in for evidence because they think it was involved in a crime. And she only had the car for 2 days, so clearly they bought it from whoever was involved with the crime. And then Dexter does some more research into serial killers to find inspiration for his new dumping grounds. And he essentially hallucinates a few different serial killers and talks to them. I thought this scene was pretty cool. And then Deb's nemesis at school, I believe her name is Tiffany, she's pissed about the car because if you remember in the previous episode, Deb and her boyfriend stole Tiffany's car and parked it on the beach and they got sand in the engine. Deb's best friend Sophia sold her out and told Tiffany what they did, and Deb punches Tiffany in the face and makes her nose bleed. And then we get a scene at Miami Metro where Masuka, Dexter, and the other cops are talking. Masuka's talking about how he saved Dexter's life from getting eaten by an alligator. One of the other cops says how Alligator Alley would be a good place to dump a body. Dexter asks them what would be some other good ways to dispose of a body. And then Harry walks in, asks them what they're talking about. Dexter says nothing, but then another cop tells Harry what they're talking about, and Harry looks at Dexter like, what the fuck are you doing? And then Bobby and Angel walk in carrying Nikki's finger. They give it to Tanya so that she can run the test. She calls in Dex and Masuka to help her. She figures out that pruning shears were used again, just like Jimmy Powell. And Dexter finds blood on the outside of the box that the finger was in, and he thinks that it could be the killer's. And Tanya says we'll run the test on it and tells Dexter he has a good eye. She thinks that any lead is worth exploring. And then Captain Spencer is understandably upset. Tanya confirms that the finger does belong to Nikki and that he was alive when the finger was severed, but that there are no prints or fibers or anything from the killer, but that they might have the perp's blood. And Spencer tells Tanya, good work, but she says it was actually Dexter. And then we get a flashback to Laura coming home with some groceries, and, you know, one of the Estrada's guys shows up, tells her to get into his car. They go to a house and tells her to take off all of her clothes. She comes out in a robe and meets Hector Estrada out by the pool. He asks her to join him for a swim, and she is butt-ass naked. But this is pretty much the only way that he can trust her, to know that she's not wearing a wire. So they're talking. He's impressed that she's been able to expand her clientele. He's impressed, like, with the hunger that she has. Asks her, what drives you? She says, my family. I want to provide comfort for them. And he tells her that he is expanding his territory and has a shipment coming in next Tuesday that he wants her to be there for at the shipyard. So I'm assuming that this is going to be the scene where they kill her. He clearly doesn't trust her, and when she leaves, he tells his man to keep an eye on her. Dexter finds a hesitation cut on the finger, which there was no hesitation cut for Jimmy Powell's finger. Then we find out Deb got kicked off of the volleyball team, suspended from school. Harry is obviously upset about this. He grounds her. And then finally we are at the end of the episode. Dexter goes to work and Captain Spencer is sitting at his desk. They find out that the killer, or the blood sample, has the same blood type. So Spencer assumes that this was just Nikki's blood that they found rather than the killer's blood, but Dexter tells him a lot of people are A positive, so maybe the killer just has the same blood type. And then Dexter tells Spencer about the hesitation cut that he found, and Spencer says, what do you think that means? And Dexter says it could be an inexperienced, nervous cartel member, or maybe even someone who feels some kind of connection to Nikki. And the second he said this, I was like, oh my god, is it really about to be Spencer? And then we see Spencer with a cut on his arm. If you remember earlier in the episode, Nikki cut the killer. He sliced their arm. So the second we saw that scene earlier, I knew that the episode would end with showing someone with a slice on their arm. So obviously the killer is Spencer, and Dexter is like, how did I not see this before? And then the episode ends with Spencer at a grocery store buying the Sunny Smiles meals, the meals that the killer has been giving the kids. I knew it. I knew that it was going to be Spencer. You guys know I posted a theory on my channel like 3 weeks ago. I literally suspected Spencer before the season even started. Literally before episode 1. You can go back and see that I did a video called Last Minute Predictions. And I thought Spencer, there was more to him. Just because oftentimes in past seasons of Dexter, whoever the biggest actor is ends up being the killer, like John Lithgow, Colin Hanks. So Spencer was just already on my radar, just the fact that he was played by Patrick Dempsey. But yeah, if you go back and watch my Spencer theory video from 3 weeks ago, all of the signs were there. There were so many clues, like, for example, when he was talking to the press, one of his lines was suspicious to me when he was like, be prepared to pay the ultimate price. You know, he clearly was putting on a show because he was the killer. And then also in a previous episode, after Harry fucked up in court, Spencer met him for a drink and was like, you're my best detective, but I have to take you off of the Powell case. Why would Spencer want his best detective off of the case? Because he didn't want his best detective figuring out that he was the killer. And then even in the previous episode, episode 6, Tanya was like, this person knew what they were doing. They left no evidence behind. There's nothing to go on. That's because Spencer is a cop and knows what cops look for at a crime scene. Just like Dexter, you know? They both know what the cops look for. And Tanya even says that this person knew to avoid the oil spot on the garage floor. And that's because Spencer used to live there. That's his house. So yeah, I knew it. A lot of us here knew that he was going to be the killer. This was crazy. I can't believe that they did this. I also knew it because the show creators said that they thought that the reveal would be very surprising to people. So obviously it had to be someone that we thought was a good character, like Spencer. I also was briefly suspicious of Tanya. I did put out a theory video just last night or the day before about why it could potentially be Tanya, but Spencer was number 1 on my list. Also because I've been wondering, like, where is Captain Matthews? Matthews is the captain, in the future on like the original Dexter show. So obviously Dexter is going to have to kill Spencer before anyone else finds out. Like Miami Metro is not going to find out the truth. Dexter's just going to kill him, dispose of him, and then that is why Matthews has not been in the show yet. They're saving him for season 2. So Dexter's going to kill Spencer in the finale. He's going to disappear, and then they're saving Matthews for next season. But that is it for today. That is my little recap and review for episode 7. Obviously, crazy episode, possibly the best one so far. Let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on future recaps, reviews, Dexter theories, and I will see you guys next time.